Technological determinism.
Good, yeah. So we've got technological determinism on the one hand. So there's a sort of inherent natural property of the object that determines the politics, right? The way society is organized. What is the critique of that? What's a different way of looking at that?
That we give objects their politics and their meaning.
Okay, good. So,
Well,
like, give me an example or explain that a little bit.
yeah, so technological determinism would say that objects inherently have qualities or politics and that they enter the world with those politics. And that we can't do so much about those politics, but the other flip side would be that these objects are created and imbued with certain politics, and those politics change or affect the world that they enter in.
Okay.
But,
Yeah, I think that's what he's getting at by the end. But he's positioning himself between sort of, again, the nature-culture position. Does anyone remember the sort of other side? Yeah.
So that objects are, I might be saying something too close to her, but objects are created to have a certain way.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think you're saying similar things, but let me just put this up here. So there's technological determinism that says, you know, what matters is the object, the materiality of it, right? That determines social organization, politics, etc. The other sort of argument is the social determinism of technology. Tech, which says what matters is the social organization, the politics, and that's sort of what determines. I think you're right. Like that is what determines the politics that the objects take on. And he's saying it's somewhere in between here, right? And he calls that a theory of technical politics or technological politics, right? In which there are aspects in which the materiality of the object really doesn't matter, but you can't just sort of say that determines everything, right? Going back to the Engels and the idea that democracy, what is it? Democracy stops at the factory gate. Do you remember that phrase? What does that mean? You nodded. Sorry.
I remember the quote. Let me see my names. It was basically that, you know, in the outside world, people have a say in technology and a say in the use of it, but like once it goes into the factory, like you just use it because it's there and it's your job. And I feel like it takes the like humanism out of it.
Okay. Good. Yeah.
Well, like in the sense that like democracy ends like at the factory. It's like when, like what Engels was like arguing like if you like, I think it was like nuclear power or something like that. Like you can't have. It's like it's necessary to have like. It's like it's going to come with like a certain political organization just because of the like power that the object has.
Okay, so that's the example he uses to talk about this, right?
Mm-hmm.
That there's something about the way nuclear power is because of the danger of sort of nuclear material and waste, because of the centralized nature of energy production, that determines a certain political order, right? There's a degree of authoritarianism to that. Yeah, great.
Well, I think the follow-up with the factory, he also has an example about this owner of a factory in, I don't remember what it was, but that he had a problem with the workers like unionizing, and in order to like get rid of the unions, he made a machine that would make the same like thing as the skilled laborers would make, but it was like less useful the machine was than the skilled workers, but he did it anyway because he didn't want the unions to like to organize and stuff. So that's kind of like he used the technology to like make a social change.
Good. Yeah. So that sort of brings us here, right? In between, right?
Yeah.
The technology has a particular politics, but it's employed because of the sort of context, the social context in which it exists, right?
Yeah.
And Winters is making the argument that it's not just sort of efficiency or production that's going to determine how technologies are adopted, that this is a political question, right? And that comes up in the Norton reading. Couple more things on the Winter, because I just want to wrap this question up. So democracy stops at the factory gates is essentially one version of saying Engels' position, right? It's the same argument. The inverse of that, though, would say that just because you have sort of particularly determined relations within the factory, within the machine, whatever it might be, that doesn't mean that he's arguing against this. That doesn't mean that's how society has to be organized. That there are different ways of doing it. And he even brings up the question of whether we have to organize maybe a factory in a given way, or are there other ways of sort of changing that, right? Okay, so moving on to the Norton, the street. What was the basic argument there? So this is where we start getting into the automobile. How do we understand the street currently? Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, I mean, the article as a whole was basically discussing that our cities and our societies have been built around cars and streets, whereas it used to be more along the lines of like, what is convenient access to people, and now it's what is a convenient way to build it for cars to use it, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Good. You want to add
I
that?
was just saying, like, the articles, like, to me, main point was that how we don't generally think of how things, like, how cars now we think of are for, or streets are for cars, but how that's not how it always has been, and what kind of, how technology changes the way societies think of other things.
Good. Yeah. So, other people? Okay.
Like, I think that it's kind of like the same idea as like the objects have politics type of thing, because it's like when you think of the street, it's like a physical, it's like object, but it's like, oh, like, you know, you like walk on the street or you drive down the street or something like that. But like in the creation of like the use of the street as it is now, there was a lot of like political conflict over like what the street is actually supposed to be used for. Like pedestrians thought that it was like supposed to, like they were entitled to use in the street, or like parents were against like use of a car because it's like it threatens like child safety. So there's kind of like an object that you don't even necessarily like think twice about now is like the origins of it have like a lot of like political like history.
Good. Yeah, good. Whatever. I mean, we want to sort of denaturalize this idea of the street as a private space, or a space strictly for sort of private automobiles, right? That there's a history to this in which this was actually created through a series of political contestations. And there were other sort of ways the street was understood and used, and that getting from there to here was an active political process. And it was also, I think, one of the other important things to pull from that was that it was not inevitable, right? This was something that came about through particular struggles, and it could have gone different ways. And so he's pointing out sort of who the actors were, what the interests were that came into play that sort of pushed it in the direction it ended up going.